I'd like you to meet two dynamic young women who are breaking molds as spiritual leaders, teachers, and scholars at Northwestern University. They're here to talk with me about faith and service as women of color at a predominantly white and privileged university. I welcome Reverend Jackie Marquez, an ordained minister in the Disciples of Christ and associate university chaplain at Northwestern, and Tahera Ahmad, a member of the Muslim community in the Chicago area and associate chaplain and director of interfaith engagement at Northwestern. Thanks to both of you for being here. What is it like to be women of color at a university where the majority are white and privileged students?
In our work, we work with people from all racial and ethnic backgrounds as well as religious traditions. So our training prepares us to be able to be flexible and be there for really anyone. So I think that the majority of the students are white at Northwestern. It doesn't so much impact our work because of the training that we have. It's more about how we can support their own journey.
The only thing I would add to that is that, many other universities that are similar to Northwestern are now accommodating for the different minority groups that do exist. And so while Northwestern continues to remain a majority white privileged student body, I would say that because there is an attempt now to really look at the needs of the lower income socioeconomic students, but also, as Jackie mentioned, as Chaplain Marquez mentioned, this idea of supporting the minority group students, I think that the attempt of that and the support for that is definitely there. Okay. With that, of course, do come challenges, and I think that we often serve as facilitators of those difficult conversations that need to happen in order for us to continue to move towards what would be best in order to serve the needs of our students.
Okay. And that kind of leads into my next question is, what do you say to or how do you guide students that present feeling like they don't fit into the culture at school?
Well, I think Tahera and I both have a lot of experience not fitting in a lot of places. In many ways, we're pioneering in our different traditions. She obviously in the Muslim community, for myself as a Christian woman, there aren't many Latina university chaplains or ordained Latina women. And so I think we're able to share from our own personal experiences of always kind of standing out or feeling like a first, or not necessarily having a model to turn to when you're trying to get through a difficult time. And part of at least what I tell students is that you have to be willing to kind of stick it out a little bit and have faith that you're not going to always feel that way, and also to be able to create your own community, create your own space if one doesn't exist. Look for like-minded people, and begin to create a safe space, a comfortable space for yourself.
Okay.
I would agree to that. And what's really amazing is the resilience of these young people that we work with. And yes, they draw on our support and our leadership. And oftentimes we see that, as Chaplain Marquez mentioned, like they see role models in us in that way. And, it's a great privilege even for me and I'm sure for Chaplain Marquez to be in that situation where we are leaders for these young individuals, particularly women of color. At the same time, I think we encourage them to build those strong, safe and brave spaces. And so really it's a unique time that we live in where
for sure.
I think young people are able to be in conversation with each other and really engage on questions that are meaningful and particularly from a spiritual perspective.
And you led a program called Spirituality as Resistance. What does that mean?
Well, so the program that we co-facilitated was titled Faith and Feminism, Spirituality as Resistance.
Okay.
And so it's this idea that women of color coming together and really talking about their own narratives and their own journeys as being women of color, but also being faithfully feminist within their traditions. And what does that look like? What are those challenges? What does that trajectory look like? And then really in the time and space we live in to talk a little bit about the kind of spiritual reservoir that each one of us hold in order to take upon the challenges, the daily challenges challenges of life, as well as those that we struggle together as a social phenomenon. And so it was an opportunity for both our faculty, staff, and students to come together and really talk about what does it mean to have a sense of passion towards what's best in terms of social justice and truth, but that comes from your own spiritual reservoir, you know. And so to really look at it from the perspective of faith, and how does one's faith and values guide them towards living a life of meaning and purpose.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I think also as women of color, there's an element of embodied spirituality in looking at spirituality as resistance, particularly when you live in a society or work in institutions that aren't always affirming of the way you look, the way you speak, the way you dress, the way you present as a woman of color. You're always kind of pushed to try to fit a certain mold. And oftentimes that can be very depleting for women, and specifically for us as women in ministry. And so using spirituality as resistance, I think, really helps encourage your journey and affirm your being as a person made whole by God.
Both Latinos and Muslims have felt under attack by our current administration. Do you see ways where those two groups can work together?
Well, we are.
You're one example. Excellent.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, I believe that all good people with good intentions and values towards humanity and social justice can come together. I think the Latino community and the Latinx community has a lot to offer in terms of their own challenges and the way that they've been navigating through those challenges. And I know that the Muslim community has been really taking a lead on working together on initiatives right here in Chicago, particularly around coming together you know, on social justice reform, on housing reform, on policies that impact both communities. So I think that communities that really do face the kind of struggles, particularly with minority communities, such as the Muslim and Latino communities, can come together to support each other.
And I think it's helpful to keep a perspective of the intersectionality of our identities, that, you know, perhaps we might not connect across our religious beliefs, but there are so many other identities that we share that intersect, and that we can support each other with some solidarity across those identities, so that both of our communities can be successful, and most importantly, given the climate in our nation, that both of our communities can be as safe as possible.
And job security, for example, is one of those, you know, and, you know, how can we work together on policy reform that ensures those who are most impacted, often who are considered the weakest members of our societies, who really are working very, very hard every single day. I think many Muslims and Latinos share that same sense of struggle to really make it on a daily basis, and to have health care, for example, and the type of things that really matter in terms of your bread and butter. So I think socioeconomically, they need to stick together and really think about ways to help reform towards what is best for all minorities.
For everybody. And it seems like a university setting might be particularly rich in that lots of people in various similar scenarios can unite.
Yeah, and the university is a great place to have those conversations, you know, to have those forums, to have students come together, especially those who are interested in, you know, social policy and reform.
Well, I'm grateful for the work that you're both doing. Thank you so much for being here, Tahera and Jackie.
Thank you.
I'm Polly Toner for Different Drummers and the Greater Chicago Broadcast Ministries. Keep the faith.